So, uh, so good day, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be part of this symposium, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to give this keynote. My name is Vesna Svalina. I'm an associate professor of music education at the Faculty of Education Josip Juraj Strossmayer University of Osijek from Croatia, where I also serve as chair of the music subdepartment. Before I move into the main ideas, just brief sense of where I'm coming from. As previously mentioned, my work focuses on music education in primary and secondary schooling, with particular interests in musical creativity, music listening as a classroom activity, and teachers work in both traditional and digitally mediated contexts. I'm also interested in exploring how creative and interdisciplinary approaches can support pupils' socio-emotional development and contribute to more humane school culture. I'm the author of 2 books and more than 40 research papers, including publications in international Q1 and Q2 journals. I also serve on the editorial boards of 2 journals, Essence Social Sciences, published by Springer Nature, and the Journal of Interdisciplinary Art and Education, which will also publish selected articles from this symposium. Alongside my academic work, I have spent many years directing choirs and vocal ensembles. What choir rehearsals teach you very quickly is that artistry is never only about the product, it's about process, listening closely, responding to others, building trust, and taking shared responsibility. And that experience strongly shapes how I think about humane school culture and what the arts can do in everyday educational practice. The title of my talk is Educating for Humanity Through the Arts, the role of musical and interdisciplinary creativity in shaping a humane school culture. I approach this topic not only as a researcher, but also through my work with pre-service teachers, children in schools, and practicing educators, people who are all trying to keep the arts alive in systems often constrained by time, standardized outcomes, and constant pressure to prove effectiveness. At the same time, many of us are seeing growing emotional and social needs among children, and classrooms are becoming more complex places to share, to learn, and to live together. In that context, the arts are sometimes treated as nice to have, valuable perhaps, but not essential. My argument today is the opposite. If we want schools that educate for humanity, we cannot treat the arts as peripheral. Because when we ask what helps children feel seen, heard, and connected, we so often return to artistic experiences, singing together, shaping a story through movement, creating a theater scene, drawing, improvising, composing, making meaning with others. I want to begin with 2 guiding questions. What does it mean to educate for humanity through the arts today? And what do children actually gain as human beings from arts experiences in school? These questions frame my talk. I won't offer a single definitive answer. Instead, I will share a few perspectives grounded especially in music education and several examples that may resonate with your own contexts. And when I use the word humanity, I mean the everyday capacities that help us live and learn well together in schools, dignity, belonging, empathy, care, and the ability to make meaning with others, very much in line with humanistic education's focus on the whole person and on the relationship. Let me briefly map out the structure of the keynote in 4 steps. First, I will outline why the relationship between art and humanity has become particularly urgent in contemporary education in the context of ongoing social, cultural, and technological change. Second, I will focus on musical and interdisciplinary creativity and on what it can offer to children's emotional, social, and ethical development. Third, I will share a few examples of interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary arts projects that open spaces for exploring identity, difference, and care, and that contribute to more humane school culture. Finally, I will suggest several principles for teachers and for educational policy if we truly want art education to support humanity in schools rather than simply decorate the curriculum. With this in mind, let me turn to the first part, why art and humanity now? When we speak about educating for humanity through the arts, it can sound maybe abstract or even idealistic, so I want to ground it in realities that many of us recognize in everyday school life. We are educating children in a world shaped by multiple crises and uncertainty, ecological concerns, wars and conflicts, social inequalities, and rapid technological change. Many young people carry anxiety, insecurity, and the sense that the future is unpredictable. At the same time, education systems are under growing pressure to be measurable, standardized, and comparable. Accountability matters, of course, but when measurability becomes the dominant language of schooling, we risk reducing children to outcomes and, as Gerd Biesta warns, valuing what we can measure rather than measuring what we truly value. In such conditions, children can too easily be seen mainly as performers of outcomes rather than as complex human beings with emotions, relationships, stories, and moral worlds. This helps explain another tension in contemporary education, one that Anna Kraft described very clearly. Over the past few decades, she argued creativity has moved from the margins of education towards the center, driven by globalization, the knowledge economy, and rapid technological change. In many policy contexts, creativity is valued because it is seen as essential for problem solving, innovation, and adaptability. But Anna Kraft also points to a paradox. While creativity is increasingly celebrated, education is simultaneously pushed toward technicization, bureaucracy, and standardized accountability. In that context, the arts can be pushed to the margins or defended only in instrumental terms as a way to raise achievement elsewhere. Yet, if we justify the arts only by what they deliver, we lose sight of their deepened human significance. This is exactly why the idea of humanizing creativity is so helpful. Carrie Chappell argues for a more humane framework in which creativity is not primarily an individualized performance, but a relational process shaped through empathy, shared responsibility, and collaborative communal meaning making. In other words, it is not only about being creative, but about becoming more human through how we create together. And that is why art and humanity belong together in education. For me, the connection between art and humanity becomes clearer when we stop thinking of the arts as separate subjects and start thinking of them as spaces of experience. First, the arts are spaces of meaning making. Through a song, a drawing, a story, or a movement sequence, pupils can explore joy, fear, anger, hope, loss, and belonging, often in ways that are difficult to reach through purely verbal or analytical tasks. The arts give form to what is felt, but not yet fully articulated. Second, the arts are spaces of empathy and recognition. When children listen to one another's music, watch one another's performances, or respond to one another's images, they practice seeing and hearing the world through someone else's perspective. This is deeply connected to humanity, recognizing that the other is different from me and equally worthy. Third, the arts are spaces of imagination. At a time when public discourse is often dominated by fear, urgency, and scarcity, the arts help children imagine different futures, different ways of living together, and even different relationships to nature and technology. Imagination here is not a luxury. It is tied to moral perception and responsibility. To care, we need to be able to imagine the other and imagine alternatives. Let me give one simple classroom example. A short task such as create a soundscape of a place where you feel safe often reveals not only musical ideas, but stories of belonging, memory, and care. I might first give pupils 2 minutes to close their eyes and imagine the place. What do you hear? Is it close or far away? Is it loud or quiet? Is it steady or changing? Then in small groups, they create a 20-30 second soundscape using voice, body percussion, classroom objects, or simple instruments. One group might create a home soundscape, a gentle pulse like footsteps in a hallway, a soft humming, a quiet kettle sound, a door closing. Another group might choose nature, wind through trees, distant birds, a slow wave-like rhythm. Someone else might invent a safe place that is not physical at all, more like a feeling, and express it through a repeated pattern that gradually settles. When we listen back and ask, what made this feel safe? Children often talk about relationships, being with someone who protects me, being heard, being allowed to be quiet, not being judged. So the task produces musical ideas, but it also opens a window into belonging, memory, and care. So if we take meaning making, empathy, and imagination seriously, then the arts are not an extra, a decorative layer around real learning. They are one of the central ways children develop as human beings who can feel, think, relate, and take responsibility. This is why the question is not simply how can we fit the arts into existing school structures. It is also what kind of school culture do we create when the arts are taken seriously. A school culture shaped by the arts is one where multiple forms of expression are valued, not only verbal and written. Listening and responding matter as much as producing and performing. And there is room for ambiguity, uncertainty, and exploration, not only for right or wrong answers. Such a culture can be more humane because it recognizes that learning is not only cognitive, but also emotional, social, and ethical. In the rest of my talk, I will focus on music education, the field I know best, while drawing connections to broader arts and interdisciplinary practices. Before I go on, let me offer a quick thought task for you. We have two circles, I and we. Please think of one musical activity that strengthens the self. Voice, confidence, agency, your I. And think about one musical activity that strengthens the group. Belonging, care, listening, coordination, your we. And keep your examples in mind. You have a few seconds. And here are a few possible answers. For I, a child invents a 4-beat rhythm, a short melodic motive, or sound signature that represents how they feel. For we, it can be call and response, creating a class rhythm together with each child adding a simple pattern. A circle song or a sound picture in which everyone contributes one small sound and adjusts by listening to others. These simple tasks show how music moves from my idea to our shared piece. What matters is that music education constantly moves between these two circles. And the humane school culture often grows precisely in that movement from I to we. When we think about music in school, we often picture songs, notation, instruments, maybe a school concert. But music is first of all a human practice. Long before children can name notes or read notation, they already live in a musical world. They are rocked to sleep, they hear songs at home, in the street, and in shops. They move, clap, hum, invent little musical ideas of their own. Music is part of how they play, how they connect, and how they regulate emotions. So when music enters the classroom, it is not something entirely new. It is a continuation and the transformation of something deeply familiar. That is precisely why music education can connect school learning with children's lived experiences. In this sense, music in education is not only content to be taught, it is also a way of being together, listening and responding, taking turns, coordinating attention, creating something that no one could create alone, experiencing time, tension, and resolution together. These are musical experiences, but they are also deeply human experiences. And that is why music can be such a strong pathway toward a more humane school culture. If we look at what children can gain from these musical experiences, three socio-emotional dimensions become especially visible. First, emotional expression and regulation. Through singing, improvising, or even choosing music that fits their mood, children can express feelings that are hard to put into words. And the structure of music, rhythm, repetition, phrasing can help hold and regulate those feelings. Sometimes a steady pulse comes a restless group. Sometimes a familiar song gives shape to joy, frustration, or sadness. Second, empathy and perspective taking. When children listen to each other's musical ideas and respond to them, they practice listening not only to sounds, but also to intentions and feelings behind those sounds. In group music making, they constantly negotiate. How loud should I play? When do I join? How do I support the others? That kind of musical interaction trains attention to others and flexibility in one's own behavior. Third, confidence, voice, and identity. For many children, especially those who struggle with academic tasks, musical creativity can be a place where they feel competent and visible. When a child contributes a rhythmic idea, a melodic phrase, or a movement pattern that the group adopts, it sends a powerful message. I have something to offer. My ideas matter. Over time, experiences like this shape how children see themselves, not only as pupils, but as creative, expressive human beings. These observations are also supported by a growing body of research in music and arts education. Without going into methodological details, I would like to highlight just a few findings. Group music making is consistently linked with belonging and inclusion. When children sing or play together, they learn cooperation in very embodied ways, listening, adjusting, contributing, and that often translates into feeling part of a community. In practice, we often see that this when a hesitant pupil gradually joins in, not because they were told to, but because the group's pulse and shared attention makes it feel safe to belong. Improvisation and composition are often associated with agency and confidence, especially when the classroom climate makes experimentation safe. When there isn't a single correct answer, children can take small risks, make mistakes, try again, and over time that reduces fear of failure and builds a sense of I can do this. More recent work also suggests that improvisation can support reflection and identity work, particularly when it is paired with expressive responses, talking, drawing, writing, or movement, so that pupils can notice what they felt, thought, and discovered about themselves and others through sound. Of course, none of this happens automatically. Outcomes depends on design, the task, the norms, the climate, and how children's contributions are recognized. But the potential is clearly here. If we link these research insights back to the idea of humanity in education, one thing becomes clear. Musical creativity is not an add-on to real learning. It is one of the places where real human learning happens. Because in music, children practice being with others, they listen, they wait, they respond, they co-create. They also explore who they are. They try out ideas, take small risks, find a voice, and experience agency, often in ways that don't always appear in more academic tasks. And importantly, they experience belonging. When a child's rhythmic idea is taken up by the group, when their sound or movement become part of a shared piece, they receive a powerful message. My emotions and ideas have a place here. I matter. So when we talk about educating for humanity, musical creativity gives us something very concrete, a daily practice of relationship, identity, and community. And in that sense, a humane school culture is not built through declarations or policies alone. It is built day by day, lesson by lesson, through experiences like this. So far, I argued that music and the arts can cultivate meaning making, empathy, and agency. And now I want to make this more concrete through a few project examples that connect the arts, other subjects, and children's lived experiences. One clear example comes from Laura Cuervo's study in the secondary school music class. The context may sound familiar. Students showed low engagement and had limited experience with creative work. Instead of treating composition as an isolated music task, the project connected music with art, science, and technology around a shared theme, landscape. Students used cross-modal analogies, images and drawings become prompts for musical choices such as dynamics, texture, instrumentation, and form. They explored sound, developed landscape-inspired ideas, and used non-traditional notation with voice or instruments and ICT. Compared with the more traditional teacher-centered approach, the interdisciplinary model supported stronger understanding of musical elements, more flexible thinking, and greater engagement, autonomy, and self-confidence. When students could connect music with other domains and with their own realities, they become more willing to take creative risks. For my keynote, the key point is that composition here becomes a human practice, making choices, listening, revising, negotiating ideas, and translating experience into shared form. The second example with younger pupils is Fisher and McDonald's Project Stormy Weather, a 3-week integrated arts curriculum developed in US elementary school. Developed through collaboration between a music teacher and a classroom teacher, it connected science, literature, and multiple art forms, music, movement, visual art, and drama around a single theme, weather. Across 4 episodes, introduction, wind, rain, and snow, pupils created storm soundscapes, improvised wind dances, responded to paintings, experimenting with materials, and made snowmen from recycled resources. I include this example because the arts create a shared experience. Children learn content, and they also practice listening, responding, and co-creating foundation of a humane school culture. The project culminated in a school-wide weather forecast performance where pupils took roles as reporters and shared songs movement pieces, recitations, and visual projections. That final event matters because it turned learning into a collective cultural moment, something that the community can witness and remember. For children, being seen and heard in that way is not decorative, it is formative. So the lesson is simply interdisciplinarity is more than connecting subjects. It can also be designed to humanize learning by creating shared experiences in which children practice listening, responding, and belonging through sound, movement, story, image, and performance. Alongside these project examples, I want to briefly name a framework that links arts education to a concrete dimension of humanity, international mindedness. Holmes and Van Alstyne argue that international mindedness is not only knowledge about cultures, but also empathy, the ability to respect different perspectives without necessarily adopting them. In music education, this is especially relevant when we teach world musics. If we treat them as short tourist moments, students may learn a song but not develop deeper understanding or respect. The authors therefore propose an internationalized approach to instruction, an 8 strategy framework guided by one principle, depth over breadth. In practice, this means cultural contextualization, authentic resources, local global connections, and staying with one culture long enough to build genuine understanding. At this point, it helps to name a distinction between interdisciplinarity and transdisciplinarity. Interdisciplinarity is what many of us already do. We start from school subjects and connect them to deepen learning. We might connect music with language, science, or history, or connect different art forms like music with visual art, drama, or movement to explore a theme from multiple disciplinary angles. The starting point is still the curriculum areas, and the goal is stronger understanding through connection. Transdisciplinarity goes one step further. It does not begin with subjects, it begins with the human question and with lived experience. Who belongs here? What does safety feel like? How do we live with difference? In those moments, the arts become a shared language for exploring relationships and values, especially for children who do not yet have the words for what they feel. Then the disciplines come in as tools. So when I speak about a humane school culture, I'm not simply calling for more projects. I mean learning designs in which emotions, identities, and relationships are treated as part of learning, supported by the arts as a space of shared meaning making. In other words, interdisciplinary projects can humanize learning. Transdisciplinarity simply makes humanity itself the starting point. Now I'd like to move from examples to implications. If we want the arts to humanize school life, not just decorate it, then we need 2 things at the same time. First, we need classroom principles that make creative work safe and meaningful. And second, system conditions that make this work possible and sustainable. When the arts truly humanize classroom life, it's rarely because of one special activity. More often, it's because a few consistent conditions are in place. First, children feel safe, safe to try, safe to experiment, and safe to be imperfect without fear of humiliation. Second, they feel that their voice counts. The task is designed so everyone can contribute, not only the most confident or skilled. Third, the emphasis shifts from perfection to process. Drafts, mistakes, and revisions aren't failures, they are part of the work. Fourth, there is time for reflection. So experience becomes learning, naming what a piece meant, what is stirred, and what is changed. And fifth, listening becomes relational, not passive reception, but an active practice of attention, response, and shared responsibility. Put simply, these small choices are how a classroom becomes a place where people learn and live with dignity. But teachers can't do this alone. Humanizing art education also depends on enabling conditions. Schools need protected time for collaboration because interdisciplinary work is rarely sustainable as a one-person effort. The arts need stable curricular time and status, not something that depends on individual enthusiasm. Assessment should recognize process, participation, and growth, not only polished products. Resources matter too. Materials, spaces, and partnerships with cultural institutions and local communities. And teacher education matters, preparing teachers not only to deliver content, but to design integrated learning experiences while protecting artistic integrity. Before I close, let's take a few seconds for a quiet reflection. Please complete this sentence for yourself. A humane arts classroom is one where, just keep your own ending in mind. You have a few seconds. And here are a few possible endings. Maybe one matches yours. Where it's safe to try and safe to fail. Where every child have a voice through sound, movement, image, or words. Where listening is taken seriously. We notice, respond, and make space. Where my idea can become our shared work with dignity for everyone. So my conclusion is this: a humane school culture is not built through declarations. It is built day by day through learning designs in which children are safe to try, truly listened to, and woven into something shared. That is what the arts make possible. My invitation is simple. If we want schools that educate for humanity, we must protect and strengthen arts education not as an extra, but as core culture work. Because educating for humanity through the arts means designing experiences in which children make meaning, practice empathy, and imagine alternatives together. And what they gain is voice, belonging, confidence, and the everyday practice of living well with others. Before I close, let me briefly show the key sources that inform this keynote. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for your brilliant presentation. And I was thinking about, I want to ask you to send me this presentation if it's possible, because I think that I will share it to my colleagues because you have very important topics in your presentation that may be helpful for teachers and educators and lecturers, because what I was listening now, the same problems, and I was listening to you, and I was thinking about how to solve some problems in my lessons, for example, during my lessons, and I found answers in your presentation. So thank you very much for this presentation. And if quite any questions, and if not, I have one question. How you think that is it possible to create a space, educational space, where we cannot teach, not and give not only knowledge but educate humans? So combination of education, wisdom, information, and humanity and art. So everything is total artwork. So can we create such spaces, or is it possible?
Yes, maybe also is a question maybe of someone can't say that we have no time. We have curriculums that we must um, look what we must do in our lectures, in our music classes or art classes. It's a real question how this art-based relational approach can be really implemented realistically in everyday classroom, if you want to ask that. We have large classes, we have limited time, we have curriculum pressure. It's all a big question for everyone to think about it. I think it works best if we think about that, no, like one more thing that we must to do. But we must think about different design of what we already do. I think that that is important. We can think about small routines in our classrooms, in our lessons, which will matter about this subject. Short musical warm up, for example. It can be some structured creative task. Creativity is very it's part that we don't have in our lessons, especially in music lessons. Short musical warm-up, brief reflection about these activities. The point is not to impress somebody with what we do in our classrooms, it's to be consistent. Even when we have crowded classrooms, we have used some microstructures that can work in our classrooms. These activities are small, but these activities are powerful way to build children voice, power, listening, belonging. So it is not important to adding more time to every lesson, but using existing time on different way. I think that this is what is important here.
Yes, thank you very much. And I have also one general question, maybe a broader question, maybe. Do you think that amount of pupils or students cause something? Do you think that amount of students and, for example, students and pupils somehow reflect on the results, or it depends on level and skills of pupils? Because what I have little groups and big groups, and I waste more time with big groups, but I think that I'm not correct because I must change design. I maybe it's my problem, it's my fault, because I have better results, for example, in short groups, in little groups. But if I have 20 or 25 or 30 or 40 students in a group, I do not have results, no results. So can we model a new structure or new design for educational process and manage big groups?
Yes, for big groups, for big classrooms, it is important to use group activities. It's a good way to, for example, for creative activities. It is not individual work, but group work, and that can work in classrooms. But also it's a question how we can work with younger or older students, pupils. Maybe we think that it is easier if they are older than
so
they are younger.
Age matters. Yeah, okay.
Yes. But I think that for both of these groups, we can use the same principle, but change form how we use these activities. For example, for younger children, it can be shorter, more concrete body-based activities. It is important to have a clear structure. It can be more clear cues, repetition, rhythm, movement, simple activities. For older students, I would allow more choice, interpretation, more discussion with them, collaborative decision making. You can give older students more autonomy, complexity in tasks, more interpretation with them, more peer collaboration. It is also important. So difference is less about changing the goal and more about changing the level of structure, language, and responsibility. And same is when you work with smaller group and bigger group. You can change way of work.
Thank you very much. It was very productive for me as for a lecturer.